Greetings. Happy Saturday, everyone. And
Yes,
thank you
yes,
for tuning in once again. We do want to acknowledge the Lord and his faithfulness over us
yes,
for
yes.
giving us this opportunity to share with you just about every Saturday of the month. And we
Mm,
don't take it lightly. We are so grateful.
yes,
We
yes.
also want to say happy Mother's Day to all of those that are watching. We know that giving birth doesn't make you a
Right.
mother. That there are those that have stepped in, a lot of mothers that may
Yes,
not even have children. So we
right,
want to acknowledge you as well. And those that may have lost their mothers,
right.
we do want to have a moment of silence for you as well. We know this may be a difficult time, but continue to reflect on the fond memories that you had.
Yeah,
That's certainly what we do. We have one mother that's still living,
yes,
and we are grateful that she's still here with Mom Sutter that
yes, we
has
do.
gone on to be with the Lord, but we will never forget the impact she's made on our lives.
That's right.
So
That's
before we
right.
get started, definitely want to give a shout out to BS3 Network that
Yes,
is now on Roku TV.
yes, yes,
And
yes.
all of the 30 plus podcasters that are featured on that network. We cover so many topics from sports, comedy, life, spirituality,
Right,
relationships, politics, man talk,
right.
life, as I
Hmm.
said before, marriage, of course,
Yes, yes, yes,
and music. We cover quite a bit. So if you have not
yes.
downloaded BS3 network, we offer that
Hmm.
information to you on the screen right now. We just hope
Hmm.
that you can do that and enjoy some of the programming and the creativity that
Right,
goes into it.
right. Two
Uh,
church services too.
Two church services.
That's
That's
right.
right. So we got something for every day of the week.
That's it.
And we know that church is just not on Sunday. So you can go back. A lot of it is streamed on demand. So if you miss the church service
Right.
or a show, you can
Hmm.
always go on and pick it up on demand.
That's right.
And if you by chance have been wondering how this podcasting thing works, our son, Ben Sutter III, offers coaching.
Right.
That's right, coaching. And that information is on your screen. If you are interested, seek him out. He's
Hmm.
willing and capable of
Right.
helping you to get started. Now, if you'd like to reach out to us at Sudds-R-Us Podcast, we are at that email address shown on your screen. We would love to hear from you. Comments, suggestions,
Right.
anything that you'd like to share, we are open and available to receive that.
Hmm.
So, on today, we are covering a very interesting topic. Um, some children and adults, us included,
Right.
have had
Right.
some successes as well as some struggles and some challenges
Hmm.
with the life in the hoods that
Right.
we have experienced. I mean,
That's
there's
right.
if you think about it, there's a lot of hoods
Hmm.
in your life that
That's
you
it.
have overcome and that you have embraced,
Right.
and even now that you're still enjoying and partaking of. So,
Hmm.
what are some of those struggles and challenges that we experienced in the hoods? And
Right.
we're going to
Right.
share some of those.
Hmm.
We're going to be transparent. We're going to just, open up and just share with you, some of the things that we have gone through in the hoods of our lives.
Right. Right. Right.
Okay. And this is part one. We will come around with part two later on in the month or maybe next month. You got to stay tuned to find
Right.
out.
Right.
All right.
Right. Right. All right. So we're excited to be before you once again. Thank you for tuning in.
Mm-hmm.
Please make comments, hit that like button, share, so we
Yes.
can increase our viewership. But we just want to thank you once again for commenting and also sharing with us on today. 16th episode, season 3. The Lord is truly blessing. And we're going to focus on life. So last month was Resurrection Month, and we had a couple episodes regarding Easter versus
Mm-hmm.
resurrection, and then what Christ did after Resurrection Sunday. So now
Right.
we're talking about life, living in the hoods, or life in the hoods.
Right.
You know, there are some positives and some negatives,
That's it.
some opportunities as well as some obstacles,
Mm-hmm.
and some stabilities as well as some struggles living in your hood. Now we're talking about childhood, manhood, womanhood,
Right.
parenthood, fatherhood, motherhood, familyhood, victimhood, servanthood, etc. That's why
Right.
we say living in the hoods. Well, let me give you the definition for neighborhood. Now, I didn't use Webster. I used the app on my phone. You know, I got I got an app on my phone when it comes to definition or word app,
That's
and
all right.
that's all right. This
Mhm.
is new age. It's what we
That's
do now.
it.
What we do now.
Mhm.
So this particular definition, the first one is the area or region
Mhm.
around or near some place or thing or vicinity,
Mhm.
like kids in the neighborhood. You know, I grew up on First Street Southeast in Hickory, North Carolina,
Right.
and my childhood was very memorable. I tell you, because I was close to most of the kids in the neighborhood. But interesting thing is that in one area of the street, on both sides was my family, which
Mm.
is also a family hood.
Right.
So 4 houses in a row. Next door was my grandmother or my step grandmother, and then next to her was
Mhm.
my aunt, which was my grandfather's sister, or my step aunt. And then
Mhm.
next to her was my aunt. She passed away, which was my grandfather's sister. So basically, was my uncle. And
Mm.
then across the street in this duplex was my grandmother's brother's son, which is my second cousin, his family, which were the Lutz, and they had 3 kids. And then next door to them was the Carsons, which is my father's sister's husband's family. This was
Mm.
my uncle, which is my aunt's husband. This was her daughter's son. They had a son. The next door to them was the Sudders, because my father's brother's family moved from Ohio. They lived across the street. So we had this whole section of family, or the family hood. And the interesting thing about it is that we all got along. You know, there was
Mm.
no conflicts. Everybody supported one another.
Right.
Everybody was conscious about loving one another and caring for one another, except I had
Mhm.
one aunt. Her
Wow.
name was Aunt Massey. Yes, one.
Wow.
And she had a problem. She didn't have any kids. And she had a
Mm.
problem with my step grandmother, who was the sweetest thing. I say Aunt Massey was the sweetest thing that you could ever want to know and want to love. And she was just a loving and caring lady. And my Aunt Massey had a problem with her. She also had a problem with my mother. Now, I'm not sure if because,
Wow.
yeah, I'm not sure if because my father was her favorite, but there
Mm.
was always a conflict and always something going on. So we always have that one in the family, you know, that that give you some information that
Mhm.
that always in disagreement about something that's going on.
Wow. Uh-huh.
But when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I also had some friends down the street, which was
Mhm.
the Tuckers and also the Wrights. And you know, we hung out when I was young, young teenager, and we
Mhm.
would, because they had siblings. I was the only child, so they had siblings. The Tuckers had 3 siblings, and then
Mm.
the Wright, same thing, 3. So we hung out down there a lot. We would watch TV shows together. We would play card games together.
Mhm.
We would talk about school, about church. We would sing songs together, climb trees. I mean, you know, the thing that kids do in the hood.
Right.
And we also played ball together, especially at the Wrights. They had their goal, and I had my goal in my backyard. And then we also had a big yard. My grandmother had a big yard, so we played football. The Wrights had a big yard, so we played football, and we just hung out and had fun, you know, as kids growing up in the hood. Now we in North Carolina, so it was a fairly small city. I call it medium-sized city, which is the furniture capital of the world. But
Right.
we had a lot of fun growing up. And when you think about it, we also deal with now sports and also scouts. You know, I was in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, and
Mhm.
did soapbox derbies, which was fun as well. So those are the things that we enjoyed as children growing up in that particular location. But as a child, you know, a childhood mainly is a place between, I would say, 5 years old and 15 years old.
Mm.
And it's a place of immaturity,
Mhm.
innocence, and ignorance.
Mm.
It's also a place of vulnerability,
That's it.
violence, or being victimized by some family members. You see, I was blessed not to experience a lot of that on my father's side. Well, my mother's side was a little different. And my mother's from South Carolina, and we would go down and visit my grandmother, and in that particular area, and King Street, especially when I was young, there was no TV, and in the old house there was no plumbing, and there was no electricity. I mean, you had our house, no bathrooms. So basically, what the adults had to do was play cards. And drink
and smoke.
Drink and smoke. Right. You in South Carolina, it's tobacco and cotton, so you got plenty of tobacco. So they would drink and smoke, Cools, Marlboros, all of that. And after they get into a heated card game, after they've been drunk a little while, especially my uncle and my cousin, which is my mother's first cousin, actually like her brother, because he stayed with them. He was a lot older than me. And they would start fussing and get out in the front yard, start tussling and fight. Now, I never remembered any black eyes or busted lips. So I'm assuming they were just wrestling in the front yard. Okay. But the card game, they got heated after they had a few, drinks. So that's one thing about the Lawrence family. I always remember that you have opportunities like that do occur. So I'm going to give you the scripture, then I'm going to let Irene give you some of her childhood experiences. But Song of Solomon 1:6, it says, "Look not upon me because I am black, because the sun has looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard have I not kept." We always talk about the struggles that we went through as African Americans. And there was a lot of domestic violence because the men was basically underachieving, and they were discriminated against because of segregation. So they took it out on their wives, and especially when they started drinking, they take it out on each other. So just because of the color of our skin, we cannot result to that type of activity. But that was very common back then.
Right.
A lot of our family want to keep it hush hush and keep it under the table. Oh, that's family secrets. Don't tell nobody. But no, we come to be transparent. We come to help somebody today.
Exactly.
To help somebody today about what's going on in the hood. So our childhood experience is what developed us for adulthood. So we can't forget them and sweep it under the rug. We got to remember what went on, and we can grow from that.
That's right.
Not to repeat it, but try to do better.
Yes.
And try to be more of a upstanding citizen. Even though discrimination is still out there, racism is still prevalent, even though we still go through it every day, but we trust in the Lord to bring us through.
That's right. Well, our communities were similar. I think the neighborhoods nowadays are a little bit different than what we experienced.
Right.
But we definitely had community in my neighborhood. I grew up on a dirt road. So that tells you one thing. And so we were, just straight country. I'm just going to be honest, rough feet. We running around on rocks. And I'm not talking about pebbles. I'm talking about rocks. Okay. And so we were just literally running. We weren't ouch. Our feet were accustomed to it. And so, like I said, the neighborhoods are quite different than they are now. We had a true village.
Right.
Like I said, the end of my road, it was a dead end. So you didn't have an outage. So at the end of my street was our elementary school. So walking to school, we had to pass all of the neighborhood, basically mothers, because the fathers went to work.
Right.
And so the mothers would, okay, how you doing? Good morning. And so on the way back, they would make sure that we're, behaving. If we weren't, then each one of them would get their, their spanking in on us. And then I'm gonna tell your mama too. And so, all the way home, we would get a spanking by every neighbor there was in the neighborhood because they cared. I mean, and I can appreciate that now, even the scolding. Sometimes just them talking to us. And then when they said they're going to tell my mama, oh, Lord, that was the end. That was going to be the end of it. So I really appreciated it. There was a pride of like home ownership, and
Right,
there
right,
was
right,
great
right.
leadership in our communities. There were entrepreneurs in my
Yeah,
community.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
we could go and get these huge, I mean, these little cookies they sell now in the little packs, and nothing to compare. You
I'm
talk
telling
about
you.
sugar overload.
Right,
But
right,
we
right.
had huge, they call them Rocky Road cookies.
Mm-hmm.
And for 5 cents, I
I'm
mean,
telling you.
we would work hard for that little money in our community, but we would go to the store,
Right.
black owned store. It was
Mm-hmm.
a true sense of belonging in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, our community, it may have been small, but it was one big family.
Right, right.
And we supported each other. Go next door and ask me through for a cup of sugar. Or go over to grandmama's and get a cup of flour, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems like somebody had what we needed, and
Right.
and vice versa. We had what they needed.
Mm-hmm.
So we would play outside all day long in that heat. I don't know how we did it.
Tell
Playing games like Red Rover, send Irene right over, whatever it was, dodgeball, kickball.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
you say those games to kids now, would they really understand? That's the kind of community that we had. We had no technology, no
Right.
phone, no tablet. So, we had to be creative
Right.
and innovative too,
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
grew up with very little toys that I could physically, handle and play with. I may had a baby doll once in a while.
Right. Right.
I didn't have a bike. So there were things that our neighbors had that we could play with and enjoy. We had a lot of peer pressure.
Right.
But it's nothing compared to what it is now. Nothing. And yes, we had in our community, we had issues too. Issues were in the heart of it.
Right.
Okay. And get this, we live right behind the church. Right behind the church. So, whatever happened in our neighborhood, we were not exempt. Even in my household, everybody's business was in the street.
That's right.
That's how small this city was. So, yes, there was husband swapping and wife swapping, house parties. Definitely. I'd be in there, in the back trying to peep and see what they were doing, and then running lay down, multiple baby daddies, I grew up with all of that. Not my mama now. I'm just saying.
Right.
And then, that was all that they knew, was to smoke and to drink. There were no drugs in our neighborhood that we knew of. But you're talking about secondhand smoke. I know people are saying that now, but we didn't think about that then. We were always in a smoky room, And then, not to mention, I was saying to my husband yesterday, the mental strain. Our grandparents were born in like the 1900s. And so they built this community, in spite of the slavery and segregation and racism and having to work for the man, having to go clean their house and take care of their babies and iron their clothes. And yet they made it through all of that. And they, when you visualize that, at least when I saw that in my community, it made me stronger. We literally saw them persevere.
That's right.
And so it just made me feel so much more proud to be from the community that was full of struggles. A lot that I saw them go through that by faith they made it through. And I could truly say, as we could say that we survived that hood, our neighborhood, because we escaped. If I could use that word, we escaped those temptations of taking the hard drugs and drinking excessively and having children out of wedlock. And, we were spared of being uneducated. We got our education. We weren't a part of the stagnant crowd. We were moving. We were moving and shaking, trying to see how we could get up out of that neighborhood, because we could see the hold that it had on a lot of our friends. And then we wanted to just spread our wings. So that was a success for us, in terms of both of our neighborhoods. I'm on one side of the track and my husband's on the other side in the same city, but we chose not to repeat some of those cycles. Even though we may have gotten involved in some of that, naturally, what else could we do? But that wasn't the end of our story. We started our own path. And yes, we were able to escape. And if we didn't, who knows where we would have been. So
Right,
one
right.
scripture the Lord led me to, and then I'm going to turn it back over to you. But, speaking about escape, listen to this. In 2 Peter 1:4, it reads, and because of his glory
Right.
and excellence, he has given us great and precious promises. These are the promises that enable you to share his divine nature
Right.
and escape the world's corruption caused by human desires.
Wow.
That's our story.
Mm-hmm.
Great neighborhood, great upbringing, things that
Right.
we learned and grew from. But God gave us a path or
Right.
area of escape so that we didn't get consumed by that,
Right.
but that we started our own path and brought up our children in a different way. So I'm grateful for the neighborhood that we grew up in. That's one good hood.
All right.
Yes.
So now, which is a beautiful segue to number 2. When it comes to the dictionary, which is the phone app dictionary definition. So neighborhood is a district or locality, often with reference to its character or inhabitants. We talk about adulthood. When you desire a fashionable neighborhood,
wow,
to move to a nicer, safer, upscale neighborhood. Where we live, Irene and I in the same house growing up. So we didn't move a lot when it came to our childhood. Was in the same house growing up all the way up through high school, all through our lives. But then once we got to college and once we graduated, we decided to relocate. So we, at our childhood, when we look back on it, it gave us stability.
Stability, that's key.
And it gave us consistency.
Yes.
So as an adult, I really don't like moving a lot because I didn't move a lot
Yes.
when I was a child.
Right.
So when we relocated to California, we was there for 35 years, and we actually moved 5 times in the Bay Area over the 35-year period. Now, our first place was an apartment in Berkeley, California, thanks to our brother, Irene's brother.
Yes.
He was going to Bose School of Law. Yes, shout out to Clinton Killian. And he was staying in an apartment on Hay Street. Never forget it. 1935.
Yes. Okay.
1935 Hayes. Never forget it.
Right.
Right up above Old Millville, which is Martin Luther King Jr. Way now. And we stayed. Martin Luther King.
Yeah,
Martin Luther King. Right.
Grove. That used to be
Grove. Right. So we stayed there, and it was a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. Actually had a den, so we made it a 3-bedroom, 1 bath. Nice apartment. It had a patio in the back, on the first floor, and actually had a little carport and a driveway. But Berkeley, if you know anything about, we call it Berkeley. If you know anything about Berkeley, there are some characters in that college town.
Yes, sir.
And we was introduced to them straight off the bat, straight from North Carolina. I tell you, talking about a culture shock.
That's right.
Ooh, my goodness. But we learned a lot. I used to love to take my son. He was the main one back then.
That's
up on University Avenue. We would go up University Avenue, which goes right into the campus.
That's right.
And on Saturday, you had vendors on both sides of the streets and different stores and retail businesses. And I mean, it was like a party. Go Berkeley back in the 60s. A lot of hippies.
Yeah.
A lot of protests. Weed smoking. I mean, it was like, wow, look at this. Check this out.
Right. In the open.
In the open. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So we enjoyed that opportunity. And it was, like I said, it was an experience. But it was also a growing and developing experience. And now once we look back on it, it was also a divine experience and a divine purpose.
Right.
Because right down the street was the first church we attended, New Light Baptist Church.
That's right.
And come to find out, as we got older and we started ministering and become pastor and first lady, we ended up fellowshipping with members of that church who became pastors as well as associate ministers, and one of them was associate minister. And we all met each other at that church. And also the funny thing about it is that church is where MC Hammer did his video. He did his video in that church. So those are the things that we enjoyed at our first location,
right.
in Berkeley. Then we moved to Emeryville.
Uh-huh.
In Emeryville, we rented a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house,
Right.
and it was really nice. Had a really nice white gentleman, Mr. Vodanovich. You never forget him. He was very nice and very cordial. Before we moved there, we was in a flat, or I guess you can call it a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. But he said, "Well, you got 3 kids. Come on over here." So we moved right next door.
Next door.
And I'm talking about, it was another divine purpose because of that. The neighbors were nice. We learned a lot from them.
That's right.
But also BS3, Ben Sudds III, our son, met all his long-term friends at Emory High. So that was divine purpose when we moved there. Enjoyed the neighborhood, but we always had a desire to purchase and be on our own and have our own place. So Mr. Adamas just didn't want us to move, but we ended up purchasing a house in El Cerrito. The interesting thing is that our house was in El Cerrito and in Richmond. You probably heard of Richmond, California.
Right.
And Richmond's got some bad connotations with Richmond. So when we were around influential people, we said, "Where y'all from?" We said, "We're from El Cerrito."
That's right.
And when you meet some black people from the hood, "Where y'all from?" "We from Richmond." You know. So,
that's what the kids would say. I always said El Cerrito.
You
know, and the street had a dip in it. So it let you know you done crossed over to another city.
That's it. So, but it was a 300 square foot bungalow, but the divine purpose of that location in Richmond, it was our first house that we purchased.
Yes.
And the neighbors, I tell you, we couldn't have any more loving and caring and supportive neighbors. Right. The neighbors next door to us was Miss Christian.
Yes.
Now, a name like that, Miss Christian, I'm telling you. And neighbors across the street was very nice. So even though we wanted to upscale it and move into a different neighborhood to better communities for our children, which was our purpose, but God always put people around us that encouraged us and supported us. And then from there, we moved into our dream home in Vallejo, California. We crossed the bridge, moving on up, across the Carquinez Bridge, and we went to Vallejo, where our dream home, 2,500 square feet, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, in the Glen Cove subdivision.
Right.
And I tell you, we started out with some weird neighbors next door because it was a rental. But then Tim and Cindy purchased the house, and we had lots of fun with them. And then our children, our daughters, because our son went on to college, went to Jesse Bethel High School, which was named after a black man. So that was very encouraging. Those neighbors were very supportive and very encouraging. So as we moved on up to a different level in adulthood, we were also came from some areas from North Carolina that was a little different in the South, and then moving to California. It was encouraging, and it was also a divine purpose to allow us to be in that location. And then we want to look at adulthood. You want to respond on adulthood, then we keep going.
Well, I was going to say a little bit about, I just reflected on God always had us around some elders,
right?
And so to the young people that are watching, don't ever feel like you can't relate to the elders,
right?
Because they poured into us. They were a watchful eye, even for our children. And so I think we both have always been just drawn to the elderly people.
Right.
And so we never felt like we were too big and too, grown, if you will, to listen to their wisdom. So I appreciate all of those that poured. And so I just wanted to add that, and the other part was that, in California, now we're back on the East Coast where we grew up. And then, we left, and we had definitely experienced that racism when we grew up. But when we went to California, it was more subtle and more, disguised. And very crafty with it. That's not really what I mean, but we knew what you meant. I think we were so equipped and so in tune to racism by that point that I don't care how they tried to cover it up. But then we moved back to Georgia. And so it's just been a deja vu for us. And I think my husband is dealing with it a little bit better than me. So, for y'all that know how to get a prayer through, pray for your sister, because it can still be disturbing for me, even in the community that we live in now. So I just wanted to bring that out that, we haven't gotten beyond that. And yes, I need help. And God is just keeping me on my knees in terms of these neighbors that we have, because I immediately go there, and I ain't trying to hate nobody, but it's difficult when you've grown up where you grew up, and then you come back to it after being in California where there's so much diversity. We grew up where there was no diversity. None. just chocolate, just brown chocolate folk everywhere.
That's it. That was before integration. So
that's all we knew.
Like Irene mentioned, black businesses,
exactly.
The dentists in the neighborhood was black, doctors was black. So it has been an evolution. We have definitely experienced a lot. So when we go back to that actual dictionary app, the third definition of neighborhood now is a number of persons living near one another or in a particular location. So we're talking about the whole neighborhood, which brings me to our parenthood. Like Irene mentioned, parenthood, we were really developed in our parenthood in Emeryville and El Cerrito. Because of our neighbors. Like she mentioned, most of our neighbors were older. And as the only child, I hung around a lot of older individuals, and I know Irene did as well. So it wasn't that big of a deal, where we were respectful, and also we were willing to listen, because we know that they were our seniors. They were also very wise. And we received a lot of wisdom by just listening to the older neighbors and allow them to pour into us.
That's right.
Their wisdom. And so we received a lot of good advice, a lot of encouraging words from them, because they've already experienced it. They've already been through it.
That's right.
So it's just a matter of listening and accepting that. But one thing I wanted to mention is that, we kind of struggled in Berkeley. I tell you, we talk about
that's how
starting out.
You got to crawl before you can walk. That's definitely what we did.
We crawled. I'm telling you, we came with student loans, and I'm telling you, we had hoopties. And my son BS3, he'll tell you, he always teased me about my Datsun B210 that would rattle because the frame was cracked. So every bump you hit, it rattled. And bought another used car, was a Chevy Chevette. I don't know why these people put a backup beeping on a Chevette, little bitty Chevette, like it's a truck. So we backing up out of there at Berkeley. And I know the neighbors like, okay, there they go.
There they go. Yeah, like announcing,
right. And we worked long hours. We worked in San Francisco, took part because of the vehicles and the mechanical problems we had, and to be transparent, like she said, we dabbled in, well, I did anyway, in drugs and alcohol, and try to overcome all of that,
It was stressful.
It was stressful.
It was stressful. With 3 kids, and we trying to make it.
And
that's the other part of it, that community. Like we had my brother there, but it wasn't like, like now, these young people got their mothers and their grandfathers and their grandmothers and the aunts and we didn't have that. We left our hometown and moved 3,000 miles away and just winged it, literally. And so,
we grew and we learned.
That's it.
We learned.
That's it. We did not have that connection that we, most people have now.
Let's say that's the best teacher. Experience is your best teacher. And we was blessed after the children came. My mother came out after my father passed, and she helped us out a lot. So thank God for that. But when I think about it, our faith, me particular, my wife's faith has always been strong. But my faith didn't actually grow until God got my attention when he took our firstborn daughter, Anastasia. That's when my faith grew. So we understand a lot of things that we go through are for a divine purpose.
That's right.
And that purpose really encouraged me to grow. And then we learn how to live responsibly. I'm talking about adulthood now.
That's right.
How to put priorities on raising our children in safer environments. That's why we worked hard and wanted to move when we went to Emeryville and then El Cerrito. And that's how we thought about keeping our children active in different activities and playing sports and dance and music. And once I accepted my call in the ministry, we kept them in church. And because our adulthood, we had grown. And God has brought us a mighty long way.
And like you said, we learned like the hard way, especially with the finances. And so that's why we're just so, even now being retired, we are not, cheap or tight, but yeah, we got to manage these funds to the penny.
That's it.
And so that's from experience. Otherwise, you just spend and spend and spend without a care. And you live in the moment. And that's where we were, and literally paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And so we had to learn through those experiences of getting our credit repaired and all of that, to where now we're just so, even being retired, we've learned how to, be a little bit more savvy with our finances, to where we're not scraping. Scraping was not fun. So once you get there, you overcome that, you really understand financial management is so important.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. So we learn through that adulthood.
Yeah. Adulting, the young folks say now. But that's another hood.
That's another hood.
You once you cross over into adulthood, the rest of your life is adulthood. That you're gonna have some issues and some challenges, some successes, all of that.
All of that.
Yeah.
All of that. So my final hood, and I'm gonna turn it on over.
And took over.
That's okay. That's okay. That's what it's all about.
It's
all about. Now, the fourth one, when it comes to the definition, is neighborly feeling or conduct, which is a lot about servanthood.
Okay.
A servanthood is a conduct that we've learned all the way from childhood. Like he said, in churches, youth programs. The church was behind my house as well. So we both had our home churches was right there in our neighborhoods. And when we go back, every time we go back, we visit one of our home churches. Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
It's on rotation.
That's right. We do not forget where the Lord has brought us from. I tell you. And we want to go back and bless them as any way we can with our gifts.
Serve. That's right.
We want to serve. So we're talking about servanthood. Serving. We learn how to serve in Cub Scouts. My father, and also in Boy Scouts. We served a lot. But also we learned how to serve as adults when we became active members in our church.
That's
right. Trustees and deacons and choir members and secretaries and then pastor and first lady. But the main thing is that we benefited from serving.
That's right.
We would serve in the outreach ministry. And the homeless would be so excited about, oh, y'all have blessed us, but they actually blessed us.
That's right.
They blessed us with their faith and with their resiliency. As a body of believers, we learn how to be comrades in the army of the Lord. We learn brotherhood and sisterhood, how to come together and enjoy life experiences with one another, to encourage one another and support one another. That was develop our servanthood. We develop a region of volunteers and those willing to make sacrifices, where we experience a sense of unity and the opportunity to learn how to work together. That's what servanthood is all about. Coming together as a body of believers to give to those that are less fortunate than you are. And you can learn those opportunities as you grow from childhood to adulthood into servanthood. And I tell you, the scripture that came to mind when I was looking at this servanthood, it comes from Proverbs 22:9. It says, he that hath a bountiful eye shall be blessed, for he giveth of his bread to the poor. We're talking about not only giving that bread, which is physical, something that you can indulge in for strength, but also we're talking about that spiritual bread where we can share with those individuals who need a word, who we give out tracts, and my wife still hand out tracts and devotions now, but because we want to share that word with you, share the bread of life, which is Jesus Christ. So the role of a servant also comes from the role of being our Father's children. And in that family, we want to protect and comfort and provide for those in need. As a servant, we can learn a lot from these skills from your Christian brothers and from your sisters that we learn in our men's group and in our women's group, because now we come as a family. We're talking about familyhood and brotherhood and sisterhood. A life, I tell you, sometimes we have life without a father. My father passed when I was 24, and my wife's father went on to be with the Lord when she was around that same age. So now we have brotherhoods that we can connect with young men and men of our age, and also sisterhoods where she can connect with women groups at our church, and also helps us to develop and help us to grow.
Yes, you know, even in the I think about as I was growing up, back to the neighborhood again, but you know, I'm going to add another hood, and that was the cousinhood that we had. From a big family. You know, one of my aunts had 9 kids. And so, you know, I think about the joy as growing up, you know, around our cousins. You know, nowadays, you know, even our children, they didn't grow up with a lot of their cousins. Thus, you know, they don't know many of them. And so for me, I really miss my cousins. Thank God for technology. A lot of people say, you know, Facebook is the devil, but can you just think if without that technology, we're able to keep up with our families and share memories, and so I appreciated that cousinhood that we had, and I wish we were closer. Because you don't get to see them now, you know, due to COVID, of course, and then everybody is dispersed and, you know, all over the world, basically, you know. And so I can't wait for the time when we can have reunions again, and because that was our goal, you know, to keep that cohesiveness for our family when we move back east to help our children get to meet their families. And so I will be glad when COVID is gone. I really would. Because it has impacted our lives so much that, you know, you can't connect with family like you wish you could. You know, a lot of times it's the fist bump and the, you know, the elbow bump, and you can't embrace anymore, which reminds me, you know, of just the griefhood, if you will, that we've experienced as a family. There's just been so much, not just due to COVID, but, you know, as people get older, it's gonna happen, right? It's inevitable. I heard somebody say we all standing in that line. It's just a matter when our number is gonna come up. But the deaths in our family, immediate and, you know, otherwise, has started to literally go down the alphabet. And we've gone through A, B, C, D. That's right. You know, and now we even skipped to the K's and the L's. I mean, we skipped over some, but we're progressing through that alphabet. And it's been painful. Can you imagine? You know, it's just been so odd, to be honest, when you go through grief, and your life in the grief hood. And you're Zooming with family. You can't embrace, you know, it's almost like, you know, you're not even able to grieve properly, and to cry and to embrace your loved ones. And so that's been a part of our griefhood, is that, you know, we've had several members to pass, and we just have not been able to connect. And so this is an odd way to really, you're connecting with your family, but then you really aren't. And so lately we've been able to, the last 2 services, I guess, we've been able to go and share with the family, you know, at a distance, but still feel like it's been a part. You know, so for those of you that have had that experience, we totally understand. And that's a part of the hoods that we live, you know. The other part, as a positive note, is the sisterhood. And so I have 2 wonderful sisters that I, you know, one I connect with just about every day. You know, there's one that's 10 years older than me, and then there's one that's 6 years older. And I'm telling you, when I connect with them, it just brings joy to my heart. And now, as I get older, and I've connected with some women that I've known all of my life, you know, so now we're Zooming, even though you can't connect it, at least you're able to see their face. It's nothing like that sisterhood, and they all mean the world to me. So, you know, even the ones in California that I grew up with, literally grew up with, and then those that from my neighborhood, that we're all in our 60s now, and we are reconnecting. So that's been a true blessing to be able to do that, even from a distance.
Right.
And I really appreciate it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's all that I have for now. I think you talked about adulthood and several of the things that I already had in mind to share. So
all right,
we're at the end of in parenthood. Right, we're at the end of, and to be honest, to speak on parenthood, we're reaping our rewards now. No, it's not easy being a parent, and we were learning as we went along. The first one, was trial and error, but child 2 and 3 was like, okay, we kind of got this thing a little bit better. Mistakes we did make, yes, but we're reaping the rewards now. And what a blessing. And experiencing the grandchildren, it's such a blessing.
So we got to do our station identification, and once we get that ready, we just want to put this up to let all the mothers that are viewing, thank you so much for viewing, and we love you, and may God bless you on your beautiful Mother's Day.
Yes. Okay, so here's the BS3. I'm sorry, I turned my volume down. You got to have that up.
BS3 Network is now on Roku TV under BS3 TV. Download today.
Download today.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
we love you, and we appreciate you.
Definitely.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Enjoy your weekend.
If we didn't mention you and we didn't see your comments, but thank you so much for tuning in.
Yes.